Welcome, everyone, to the Wizard of Radical Self-Respect. My name is Jared Mello, and I'm the Shepherd of Black Sheep. To my right here, of course, is Shadow the Night Owl. He is my buddy and my right-hand man, the spirit animal and mascot of the channel. Today, what we're going to do is a deep dive into a couple videos. One is from Annie Elise, and the other one's from Stephen A. Smith. And it's about everything involving the Karmelo Anthony murder case. And the questions that we're going to go over are things like, did Austin Metcalf start the fight? Is Jeff Metcalf Austin's father? Is he a racist? And what did Karmelo Anthony's family spend the money on? All interesting questions that we're going to dive into. Hello there, Miss Kim. How are you? Welcome. Make sure you keep the troops in line today. Hello there, Danielle. Shadow says hello to Miss Kim and Danielle. And the troops are in line, which is good. Hello there, D. It's not going to be difficult, Miss Kim. You know how the crowd is. Every once and again, we have a whippersnapper, an outsider, but usually not. Usually, things take care of themselves. But let's hop into this. This is actually a very good video by Annie Elise. Hello there, Julie Bug. Shadow and I say hello. Hello there, Snoop. What is shaking?
On Wednesday morning, 17-year-old Austin Metcalf, a junior at Memorial High School in Frisco.
Back to an all-new episode of Serialously with me, your host and your true crime BFF, here to talk all things true crime with you today. And you know what happens on Monday, right? It's Deep Dive Monday, where we are going through everything. The rumors, the theories, the speculation, the facts, the trial, everything about this case. And look, I've got to say, this case, it is polarizing. There is also a lot of division and a lot of controversy out there. It just recently wrapped up the trial phase, and so many of you guys have been requesting that I cover this because, like I said, there are a lot of opinions out there. And I did do an original deep dive episode on this case about a year ago, shortly after the entire incident happened. But because so many of you have been DMing and answering my questions about what case, and this one just wrapped, we're going to go back to it because there is new information. The trial has wrapped. The sentencing has happened. And I don't know. It's just one that, like I said, there are so many varying opinions on. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about yet, let me just tell you. It is the case of Austin Metcalf and Karmelo Anthony. This is a case that happened in Texas back in the spring of 2025, and it has rattled the nation to its core, mainly because of all of the controversy and the hot takes surrounding it. Of course, also because it is two teenage boys whose lives have, one of them ended, the other completely destroyed. And there's just a lot of information that I want to get into. As always, even though this case has been adjudicated now at this point, we will be talking through a lot of the rumors that have been happening, the speculation, some things from early on in the investigation. So do your own research, form your own opinions, and I ask that you please keep it civil in the comment section because I know not all of you are going to agree and be on, I think there will be some back and forth. So we're all friends here, guys. Let's just keep it civil. So with that, let's jump right in. Now, before we jump in, I did want to share some exciting news with you guys because it's that time of year. I've already seen the messages start trickling in, but our annual subscription sale is officially here. So if you've been on the fence or you've been thinking about joining our True Crime Club, whether that's on Patreon because you're a video watcher, you want the episodes ad-free, you want more access, you want behind the scenes, you want vlogs, giveaways, our 24/7 group chat, all of the things, now is the time. Also, if you are an Apple Podcast listener and you just want every single episode completely ad-free, we only offer this discount that we will be having any merch sales for all of the exclusive summer merch. The will not be back open until the fall or holiday. So grab those items now, annieelise.com. The case begins on April 2nd, 2025, around 10 a.m. Two high school boys, 17 years old, Austin Metcalf and Karmelo Anthony, were at a track meet in Frisco, Texas. The two of them got into an argument with one another, and then the argument turned fatal. Austin was a student at Memorial High School, while Karmelo went to Centennial High School, so two separate high schools, but still in the same school district in Frisco. Now, as for the fight itself, in terms of who did what, who started it, who instigated it, nobody really seems to agree on the facts of the case. It's one of those situations where it all really depends on who you're asking and who's retelling the story to you. But so far as like the broad strokes of it go, everyone is mostly in agreement of what really took place. Apparently,
Uh-oh, folks. Songbitch said that she broke her wrist today, so now she's on the disabled list a little bit. She said, I will be lurking and laying down finally. Well, Shadow and I are very unhappy to hear that. I'm not sure if you want to share how it happened. It might be a situation where it could have been worse. We're not sure. But either way, never good to break a bone. So Shadow and I wish you a speedy recovery, of course, and as do the rest of the flock of black sheep here too.
there were these different tents that were set up for the different high schools. So everybody at the track meet would really have their own area to hang out with their own classmates, and they wouldn't have to be around other people from rival schools or even just other schools, right? According to witnesses, for whatever reason, Karmelo was at Austin's team's tent. And I don't know if maybe he was at this tent because he wanted to talk with somebody that he knew or if he had a reason to be there, but what I do know is that apparently Austin took issue with Karmelo being there. According to one of the witnesses on the scene, Austin went up to Karmelo and told him he needed to leave. He needed to go and find his own team's tent. But instead of listening, Karmelo grabbed his backpack and he reached his hand inside of it, kind of insinuating that he had something in there, but not really fully showing Austin what it was yet, just kind of like a threat, putting his hand in, being like, oh yeah, I need to, kind of like that. You get what I mean? But then he allegedly said to Austin, touch me and see what happens. And according to the police report, Austin then pushed Karmelo. So then Karmelo said something like, okay, punch me and see what happens. And I'll just be clear, I don't know if those were his exact words verbatim, but it was something to that effect. So at this point, things were getting more and more heated, and you could really tell that the vibe was off and that these two 17-year-old kids were starting to get angry at each other and tensions were starting to build. Then Austin apparently grabbed Karmelo, and it seemed like maybe he was trying to physically remove him from the tent, like pushing him out or dragging him out, but being like, I'm going to get you out if you're not going to leave, something like that. But then Karmelo took his hand out of the bag and he showed Austin what he had been holding on to. And it was something that witnesses described as being a, quote, black knife. And I don't know what kind of knife it was, if it was a kitchen knife, a pocket knife, a K-bar knife, I don't really know. Or I don't even know if it was maybe something else. But what the witness described it as being was a black knife. That is what they said. Before anybody could react to this or stop what was happening, Karmelo grabbed this sharp instrument out of his backpack and he stabbed Austin right in the chest. Once, really hard, right near his chest. Then Karmelo apparently ran away from the tent as soon as he possibly could. He just booked it and fled the scene. However, it of course didn't make this entire situation any less chaotic, right? People were panicking. There was now this 17-year-old teenage kid on the ground with this knife-type instrument sticking out of his chest, just bleeding out by the second. I mean, talk about traumatic for everybody involved, adults, kids, anybody who was there. Now, in a very heartbreaking and harrowing detail, Austin was actually a twin, and his brother Hunter was inside the tent when all of this went down. And I guess...
So it looks like Austin's to the right, Hunter's to the left. Hunter's a little bigger, it looks like, than Austin was.
Hunter either heard all of the commotion or he saw like the mass panic and everybody running and
I think I said that right.
Everybody trying to make sense of what was going on. But he knew that his brother was inside that tent. So when he saw all of this chaos unfolding, he ran over to check on his twin brother, Austin. And when he got there, that's when he saw Austin just lying there, barely conscious. So reported...
and ultimately, there's no reason for Karmelo to have a knife in that situation. Shadow and I have always said the most this ever should have been was a fist fight or a scuffle. That's really what it should have been. And we're going to listen to more of this video where she breaks down more of what was said. But Honestly, Carmelo Anthony was even more antagonistic than a lot of people have said. Austin tried to de escalate, even. He had said, I don't want to fight you. But it didn't matter. I guess apparently Carmelo kept going. Austin shoves him, and then the rest is history.
Hunter laid there with Austin, just holding his twin brother in his arms, waiting for help, hoping that somebody was going to come and fix this and make his brother better and make him conscious again. And somebody did, of course, call 911, and paramedics and first responders rushed to the scene. But Austin's injuries were too serious for them to be able to help him. They tried. I mean, they pulled Hunter away from Austin. They tried giving Austin CPR. They even tried giving him some blood. But unfortunately, the injuries were too serious. Austin was gone. His brother, his twin brother, held him in his arms as his twin brother passed away. It's just heartbreaking at just 17 years old.
What happened today? I don't know. I got a phone call from Hunter.
This is Austin's mother here, by the way.
He was screaming that Austin had been stabbed. I was at work, and so I drove. I work in Grapevine, so I drove up to the hospital straight away. I actually beat the ambulance there. I saw them have him come out. He was on a lot of machines, and it didn't take long for them to come in to say that he had passed. So, not sure, senseless act of a boy that was in the wrong tent, and my son doing the right thing by telling that boy that he needed to be removed from where he was, and just doesn't make any sense. I mean, that's just because the kid was mad, my son is not here anymore, and I don't understand it.
Now, I told you that Hunter hasn't spoken out much about all of this, but he has said a little bit. And there is one quote from him that I feel like I just need to share with you because it's such a gut punch, but it also is so indicative of that moment and what these boys went through, what this boy particularly went through. He says, quote, "I put my hand on there. I grabbed his hand and I looked in his eyes. I just saw his soul leave, and it took mine too."
And again, in the debate amongst everything else that's going on in the case, I think there's a lot of people that are acting like they just really don't care about Austin, his brother, and his parents' pain. They just don't care. They're more caught up in the race element of the case. And to me, they kind of lose sight of what's going on. And again, no one's been able to tell me why this case is an example of racial injustice. And again, I've acknowledged there are certainly racial injustices in the country. If you looked at the police officer in the Karen Reed case, Proctor, I think his name was Michael Proctor. Yeah, he's out of control. If you read those text messages, we might go over them at another time. But basically, an example would be there was a car accident, and he had said to a fellow officer, "Oh, actually, if you're working, take your time. I saw there was an N word involved. So if you're working, don't rush. Let them die." This happened not that long ago. So those kinds of things do happen. But that being said, just because they do happen doesn't mean every case is a case of racial injustice. And again, no one's been able to tell me why this one would be. The only thing they can point to is, well, no black people on the jury. And again, just because there was no black people on the jury doesn't mean there was no minorities on the jury. There certainly was. There was Hispanic. I think there might have been an Asian too. And again, basically, if that's something someone's going to point to, what they're basically saying is, well, everyone on the jury was a little bit racist then, which I don't think that's a fair thing to say.
Just heartbreaking, right? I mean, we all hear about the connection that twins have with one another, that you can feel their pain, you can feel their emotion, you can feel everything. So to be there with your twin brother, holding his hand as he takes his last breath, and according to Hunter, watching his soul leave his body and feeling your own soul leave your body with him, it is so devastating. It breaks my heart. Now, as for Karmelo, the kid from the other school who stabbed Austin, he took off from the tent, but it wasn't like he was hiding or on the run or anything like that. because when the police officers arrived, he was actually standing right there on the track, not seeming like he was trying to make a run for it away from the police, just more so that he tried to get out of the tent. He wanted to get away from the actual scene of the crime and where it all went down. But then he was just standing there on the track while the police officers arrived, not trying to hide, not trying to make a run for it, just standing there. Meanwhile, he had thrown the murder weapon at some point into the bleachers, and the officers were able to recover it while it was still just lying there where he had thrown it. It was right between row 9 and 10, not too far from the aisleway. So it seems as though when he fled the tent, he just threw it, trying to get rid of it before maybe reality of everything that was going on set in. And what I mean by that is that maybe he tried to throw it because he was going to take off and go on the run, and then he realized he couldn't. And again, that's just my personal opinion. So anyway, it's not like the police had to do this massive search for Karmelo or for the murder weapon. In fact, he was pretty cooperative when the police started questioning him and even when they ultimately arrested him. However, everybody was pretty surprised when they heard what his reasoning for stabbing Austin was, because Karmelo was saying that the entire thing happened in self-defense. The very first police officer who arrived on the scene was actually the first person who dealt with Karmelo directly. And before this officer could even put Karmelo in handcuffs, Karmelo actually said the words, quote, "I was protecting myself." Then when the officer got on the radio to say that he had the alleged suspect in custody, Karmelo apparently interrupted him and said, "I'm not alleged. I did it," just seemingly having nothing to hide. Now, at one point during the walk back to the police cruiser, the officer claimed that Karmelo also said to him, he put his hands on me. I told him not to. Kind of like as a, hey, I told him this would happen, or I told him he shouldn't do that, and he did it anyway. Then at one point he asked if Austin was okay, or if he was going to be okay, because apparently he had no idea that Austin was dying and then did die. Although I'm sure he may have suspected that it was a possibility, and that's why he was asking. He certainly didn't know that that had already happened. The truth became clear enough, though, before long, because Karmelo ultimately ended up being charged with first-degree murder. And of course, I'm going to talk a bit more about the case and some recent developments, but before I do that, I do want to talk a little bit more about Austin. I want to just talk about the kind of kid that Austin was, because it's so tragic that he was a victim and that he lost his life in this, but he was also so much more than that. And I always think that it's important that we remember people for who they were when they were alive, not just for how they died, right? And like I said, Austin was a twin. He and his twin brother, Hunter, were very close for their entire lives. Austin was also described as being a peacemaker, somebody who always liked to make sure that everybody was getting along, that everything was good.
And one thing I didn't know about Austin was he was also into jiu-jitsu. And usually people that are into jiu-jitsu, often they de-escalate because they know the power they have. Now, of course, it's not a black and white rule. There can always be people doing whatever. People screaming out the window here, man. But people who know martial arts, often they know with great power comes great responsibility, so they know not to do it.
Between people, and that everybody was always having a good time. He also had big dreams that can now never be fulfilled.
Tell me about Austin. What do you want people to know about your boy?
He was the most amazing kid. Oh, so smart. He had college football guys looking at him to play in college. His goal was to play in college. He just wanted to play football. His life was going to the gym and working out and being a leader on his football team. And he just had such ambitions and a drive that it's hard to find in a kid. And he's just such a good spirit. And so many kids loved him. And his brother lost his best friend.
They're twins, right?
Yeah, identical twins. Yeah. They've been like, they are the best of friends. Like, just, I'm so worried about my son because he's going to have to face this world alone now, because he had a brother that was with him the whole time, and now he's going to have to do it alone. And I'm just so worried about him. I really am.
Austin was also always looking out for his brother Hunter. He always had Hunter's back, no matter if he was in the right, in the wrong, it didn't matter. Austin was only born about 4 minutes before Hunter, but even though he technically was the older one, and I guess they were born at the same time, like at the same moment, Austin just always seemed like the older and wiser brother. He always wanted to take care of Hunter. He felt like that innate instinct of just protectiveness over his brother. Now, whenever the boys weren't playing sports, they loved to go hunting, especially with their dad. And not only was it a really special bonding activity anytime they got to do it together, but it was also the last thing that any of the three of them were able to do together the weekend before Austin's murder.
I mean, our relationship is really the tightest I've ever seen in somebody, like between two human beings. I mean, we did everything together, clean the dishes together, do yard work together, sports. You name anything in the world, it's always us two and one thing. So you're always just basically one person.
You guys just a few minutes apart?
4 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Austin was first by 4 minutes. He got stuck in me.
So technically, you're bigger brother.
Yes, ma'am. He does a lot of big brother stuff around. He's always on my back. Even if I'm in the wrong, he'll always take my side no matter what. It's just really heartbreaking to see someone that cares for you that much and does everything even by your side no matter what, just pass away like that.
Mm-hmm. Your mom told me that you were there.
Yes, ma'am.
The Southern hospitality too. Yes, ma'am.
If you don't mind, what happened?
There was this kid, before I knew his name now, this kid was sitting under our tent at track. We asked him to move. He started getting aggressive and talking reckless. And my brother stepped in and said, "You need to move." He's like, "Make me move." Austin grabbed his backpack. The kid, I tried to whip around as fast as I could, but I didn't see the stab. But then I look at my brother, and I'm not going to talk about the rest. So just that's just what I saw. And I try to help him, but
It was just senseless.
it was really senseless. Really, I don't know why a person would do that to someone just over that little argument. It's just crazy.
And again, they're going to go over, was Austin bullying Karmelo before this? That's the narrative some people were trying to bring up. And spoiler alert, there's no evidence of that. No one knew who Karmelo was before this. This all happened under this tent. And to me, it was just a clear disproportionate reaction. Now, again, the judge did give the jury the option of manslaughter or murder. So that he gave them the out. They chose murder anyway. So they heard all the testimony. They heard the defense attorney's statements. They heard the prosecutor's statements. And that's what they chose. And I don't think it was so out of line. I think what Karmelo did was simply disproportionate to what happened. And you have a knife and you're going to stab someone from being shoved. I mean, you just don't really have much of a case to do that.
Crazy in this world nowadays how people just up and do that. Like that man has a family, that man has people that care about them all the time, and he did everything for our family too. He was a strong man. He was a strong kid.
Austin obviously is the son, and also Hunter, who you're talking about here.
Yes, sir.
Walk me through who Austin was to you. I know that you've said so much about him, I think, in the last 24 hours here. Everyone else has said a lot about him too, about how great of a kid he was. In your eyes, though, just as a father, who was he to you?
My boys are the biggest blessing in my life. God provided them to me. God's going to get me through this. I had a dream last night. And Austin came to me and said, "I'm okay." It gives me peace. Doesn't mean I don't hurt, but it gives me great peace. So one of the things, my son, Hunter, his ability to stay strong is a character to his brother. His brother, they had each other's back. They were tight. I've never seen a bond like that. Being identical twins, technically Austin was his big brother. Those boys were my everything. I had cancer almost 10 years ago. I wasn't supposed to live, but that was my why, to fight. And without those boys, I probably would have succumbed and gave in. But they were in my heart, and I fought hard because I wanted to be their father. I wanted to be there for them throughout the years they grow up, and so I can share my wisdom and share my mistakes so they won't do the same. Austin was an outstanding athlete, person, friend, loyal, loving, he would light up the room. He was such a leader naturally. On that team, he would fire those guys up. He would step on that field, and he would become a totally different person. His level of play was above most everyone else. He led the team. He was voted team MVP by his coaches and teammates. He's had multiple coaches, colleges contacting. He is one of the most outstanding, him and his brother both have been athletes all their lives, from soccer to baseball to jiu-jitsu to football. They did it all, and they excelled every time. And I told them, you guys are so lucky, because not everyone has your talent, but you have to make sure you take that talent and harness it in the right way. And Austin was able to harness many things in his life. Loyalty to his brother, his love for all his friends and family. He was such an outstanding young man. I was so proud. I bragged on my children all the time. Anyone who knows me knows how much my kids meant to me. They were my entire world. My world's a little shattered, but I still have Hunter, and I always have Austin.
Now, one of the biggest questions in this case, and what has people so riled up, and we're going to get to more of the division of why in a moment here, but one of the biggest questions is, how does a 17-year-old boy go from being so innocent and being so loved by family and friends to then not making it out of a track meet alive, especially at the hands of another 17-year-old boy? So I think that these were the questions that a lot of people were asking, because Austin's case just felt too close to home for all of these other parents out there. Even if it happened miles away or states away, it felt like if this could happen to him, it could happen to any of our kids.
Obviously, this is not about me. I have a 17-year-old son. I live 20 miles south of you. My son's in Frisco every night playing soccer, and we have a lot of friends who knew Austin. So the circles got tight, and this hit really close to home. And I'm just so sorry for you. Can you explain us at all today how you feel? It's just got to be so. The word I keep coming back to, Megan, is incomprehensible. How could this happen at a track meet?
It is. She just took my son is gone, and I don't really have words. I've tried to figure out what I was going to say, but he's just going to be so missed by mostly our family, but this whole community has really wrapped their arms around us. And if I could say anything to the nation, I would say to make sure that you just hug your babies tight, because you don't know when the last time you get to do it.
Hunter, I know you were there. Thank you, Megan. Take your time.
And I mean, the whole thing was just absurd, right? This is a school track event where this happened. I mean, is any parent thinking, usually you're thinking the opposite, right? You're thinking, oh, thank goodness my child is doing an after-school activity and getting involved. It's keeping them safe. It's keeping them out of trouble. Well, unless you're at this place in Texas, then no, you're not safe. You're not out of trouble. In fact, you can be stabbed in the heart at a track meet, which is absurd. I mean, it's absurd and disproportionate, and no parent would ever think that. They would never think, oh yes, my kid's in danger while he's at track or while she's at track. I mean, you might think, okay, maybe a daughter could be probably more in danger, you would think, right? Because there could be SA type things going on. But in terms of something like this, usually not. You're just not going to think this, right? This came out of right field.
Now, while I don't think that there's anything I could say or any information that I could uncover that would make this make sense or feel fair, I mean, of course not, but it also is natural to want to understand how something like this happens. and what can drive somebody to commit murder. Like maybe it would be a little bit more understandable if Austin and Karmelo knew one another, if they had some kind of conflict in their past, if there would maybe make sense as to what the motive in all of this was. And in fact, not too long after the stabbing, rumors began to spread that Austin and Karmelo did in fact know one another. In fact, that Austin was Carmelo's longtime bully.
And that's garbage, but we're going to go into that. But also, Shadow wants me to remind you all to like the video because likes are free. Love tap the like button or smack the like button, whichever you prefer. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Tell a friend or 10 about the flock of black sheep here because we do have an awesome and amazing community. They're very supportive and encouraging of one another. And if you're lurking, say hello to the flock of black sheep here because, like I said, awesome group of folks here. And as always, super chats, super stickers, and becoming a channel member or gifting channel memberships, great ways to support the channel. They help me to pay for Shadow the Night Owl's soy-free Hootie snacks. He's very hormone and testosterone conscious, as I like to say. Tomorrow night will be the members only live stream. So whoever's a member, you'll be able to get access to that. That's a Q&A. And we just go over whatever. It's your time, and it's part of my gratitude for the people that support the channel. Because if people didn't support the channel, I wouldn't be here. And Shadow and I are very appreciative, so thank you.
Rumor made it seem like Karmelo had been building up to this for quite a while, or like Austin maybe had somehow brought this on himself. So it was almost a little victim blamey, but people were saying, you know, yeah, Austin was a bully. He bullied Karmelo forever, so it was only a matter of time before Karmelo snapped, that kind of thing. However, what I do want to say through all of the research is that these rumors were complete bullshit, not substantiated at all. A spokesperson for Karmelo's family even came forward to say that Austin had never bullied Karmelo, that there was absolutely no truth to any of these rumors or any of the gossip. The spokesperson also said, quote, "The disinformation that is going online is hurting this case, and it has to stop. As we know right now, Austin Metcalf and Karmelo Anthony did not know each other." And this same spokesperson has also alluded to saying that there is more to the story.
Every Texan has the right to defend themselves when they reasonably fear for their life. Self-defense is a protection that applies to each and every one of us. There are two sides to every story. And Karmelo is a 17-year-old kid and an excellent student. He is the captain of his track team. He is the captain of his football team. And prior to this, what was on his mind was what college he was going to go to. This is a tragedy all the way around for both families. Rushing to judgment, trial.
And again, I think the jury got it right because in that situation, how are you going to prove that he was in fear for his life, so much so that he was in imminent danger for his life? And that's the justification for lethal self-defense. Your life is in imminent danger, and it has to be reasonable and necessary. None of those apply to this. I mean, I see all sorts of people trying to use mental gymnastics about this case, or they'll rewrite history, or they'll create stories. Austin was bullying him, or Austin started it. All these things that are just not true. And if you dig into them a little bit, you find out they're not true. So again, I get it. There is racial injustice in the country. But this case, I just don't think is the best example of that. Not even just the best. I don't think it is an example of that. And if you do believe in that, as I do, you want to save your mental power for the cases where it actually matters. For the cases where, yeah, this is something that's off. This case just doesn't meet that threshold to me. Now, some people might disagree, and that's fine. But I just don't think this case is. Now, cases involving that guy, Michael Proctor in Massachusetts, the former state trooper, all right, maybe you'd have a case with that. And he was involved in a lot of homicide cases there too.
By public perception and trial by media is not how we ensure justice is done. We are confident that after a full investigation, that the truth will come out.
Now, I think that we can all believe and trust the spokesperson in this situation, right? I mean, it would probably help Karmelo's case if Austin was his bully. It would be easier for him to argue self-defense if there was a history of Austin picking on him and hurting him. So the fact that Karmelo's family didn't go that route and actually put the kibosh on all of those rumors, and they didn't, glom onto this idea of Austin being a bully, it tells me that they were probably being honest when they said that the boys didn't know one another. They were just two strangers arguing about something that was so unimportant. I mean, about who gets to sit under a particular tent, a simple argument that meant nothing in the grand scheme of things. Yet somehow it escalated from that to murder. Now, that being said, I do want to share a quote that comes from Austin's dad, Jeff, because he witnessed the stabbing and he has spoken out about what he saw. Again, it's not like this one quote can make sense of all of the insanity in this case, certainly not, but he has publicly shared some details about the fight and about the stabbing so that hopefully it provides a little bit more context and it makes all of this a little bit easier to understand and grasp. And he said, quote, "They were sitting there and someone was behind them mouthing off, and then they turned around and said, 'Who are you?' And he said, 'I'm Mello.' And they said, 'Well, you don't belong here. You don't go to Memorial.' He had a Centennial tracksuit on, so they said, 'Well, you need to leave. This ain't your spot.' And then some words were discussed that I'm not going to say on camera, but he asked them to leave, and he basically said, 'Make me.' And then he wound up stabbing him in the heart and killing him all over someone sitting in the wrong spot at a track meet. So yes, it was still completely random, but to hear Jeff tell it, it's not like the boys went from arguing to stabbing out of nowhere. It was like there was some kind of buildup, some kind of escalation. Now, again, why it was important of who sat under what tent, I don't know. But it sounds like Austin and his friends were telling Karmelo to get out of the tent, and for whatever reason, that struck a chord with him, so much so to grab a weapon and attack Austin. Now, what I will say on the opposite side of that is that a lot of people find it difficult to believe that Karmelo would have needed to defend himself. And that's because Austin was apparently a good kid who didn't have a history of violence or any type of aggression. So to them...
And here's the thing, as JD, a lawyer, knows, has said before, Karmelo could have shoved back. Like, once he shoved, Austin shoves him, he can shove back. He might even be able to use a fist. But the whole problem for him was using the weapon and stabbing him with it, killing him. That was the problem. But he was probably within his rights to shove back. That would have been self-defense. Even maybe punching might have been self-defense. But what he did, it just went too far. Unreasonable and disproportionate.
It seemed strange that he would threaten Karmelo badly enough that Karmelo would feel like his only option was to stab someone to protect himself. That said, Karmelo also didn't have any history of violence. He too was a good kid, a good student, a good athlete, and definitely not the sort of person that you would ever expect to commit a murder. Again, if it really was a murder and not self-defense like he claimed. Karmelo was a good student. He had a GPA of 3.7. He was the captain of the football and the track team. His teammates and his peers all respected him, loved him. He even worked 2 jobs in what little free time he had. He worked at Foot Locker and he worked at a local supermarket. And as for his family, they had moved to the area just a few years earlier from Baton Rouge. His parents were well respected. Karmelo was the oldest of 4 kids. They all had a good family dynamic. So it wasn't like you could make heads or tails of this at a surface level of somebody who had a history or a problematic background. I mean, no, both of these boys, 17 years old, good kids, good students, good friends, good families, which I think makes this case even more polarizing when you try to dissect it. Now, this detail might be key, but Karmelo had never been arrested before, not even for something small like loitering or trespassing or littering, nothing like that. Apparently, there were just no red flags, no warning signs to suggest that he may have a weapon on his person, that he may use that weapon on another peer at some point. I mean, nothing. However, of course, like I said, this case is divided and not everybody feels that way. In part because not everybody is using the same facts. Not everybody is forming opinions using the same information. Like I mentioned in the intro, there has been a lot of misinformation and a lot of rumors related to this case.
And that's a big thing she just mentioned, that not just in the true crime world, but in the political world, current events, when people aren't working with the same set of facts, it is so difficult to have any kind of reasonable discussions. Mature discussions, mature conversations, disagreements become pretty much impossible when people can't agree on what the facts are. And when people start lying about the facts or making things up, that is one of the worst things that can happen. And that's why it's so important to not let lies slide. You have to call out lies, because it unseats, it puts the whole foundation of the discussion on unsturdy ground. And unfortunately, depending on the issue, some people don't have any problems lying. Shadow and I don't like it.
And there have also been a lot of people trying to sort of latch onto this case in order to promote certain agendas or make certain points and take a certain side. Of course, it's important to, yes, raise awareness of certain issues, and sometimes pointing to a tragedy and recognizing that there are ways that it could have been prevented is the right way to do that and to achieve that. But it also does feel like at times people have sort of ignored the real people who were impacted by Austin's death just so that they could score points. Because there's one detail that I haven't mentioned so far. And depending on who you ask, it's either a detail that doesn't matter much at all and it's wrong to even focus on it too much, or it's the key issue that makes this entire stabbing make sense. And that detail is that this was a case of a black teen stabbing a white teen. See, not long after Austin's murder, a political candidate named Jake Lang, who is running for the U.S. Senate.
This is a wild story she's about to tell here, by the way. And I had never heard this about Jake Lang. Jake Lang was involved in January 6th. He was in jail for 4 years until Trump pardoned him. And now, apparently, he's a U.S. Senate candidate in Florida. But he's a far-right person. And one of his slogans is protect white America, or protect white people. And you'll see the back and forth that happens here. But I think this does a good job of, if someone wants to accuse Jeff Metcalf of being racist, okay, just listen to this. And they'll accuse him of racist because of the watermelon felon comment. But okay, listen to this. Listen to this.
It organized a protest titled Protect White Americans. It's also worth mentioning that Jake was one of the pardoned January 6th protesters, so if his name sounds at all familiar to you, that might be why. But anyway, Jake organized the protest not long after Karmelo's bail was lowered from $1 million to $250,000. And on April 14th, he was able to pay his bail and he was released to wait for his trial at home.
I feel it's fair. Bond, as the judge said, is not supposed to be an instrument of oppression. It's not supposed to keep people in jail. It's not supposed to punish.
Now, of course, there were stipulations to his release. He has to wear an ankle monitor. He can't leave his house without prior court approval. But anyway, that spurred Jake to then organize this protest. And he also created a flyer advertising the protest, which read, "Justin for Austin Metcalf. Demand Karmelo Anthony be put back in prison until trial." Now, trust me, I will be the first person to say, I understand the feeling that somebody who has been accused of murder should not get bail. There have even been times when I personally have felt like certain people shouldn't be allowed out, especially when a child is involved in the case as a victim. Sometimes there are good reasons for somebody to be held without bail. They might be a flight risk, they might pose a danger to other people, maybe even pose a danger to themselves. I mean, there are a wide variety of reasons. But I think that the whole issue here is the protect white Americans thing. And that's a direct quote, okay? I'm not just saying that. That is his quote that he was using. Because Jake didn't want to stop Karmelo from harming just anyone, only white people. And you can see where...
So what was going on was Jake was using Austin's picture on his website as an example of, see, look what black people do to white people. There's 350,000 cases a year of black on white crime. So that's what he was saying. Right, that was his website. And he calls Jeff Metcalf. And the call is recorded so we can hear it all. And it's going to be in this video. And Jeff Metcalf's answer is very telling and well done, if you ask me.
Now, politics were really coming into play here. Karmelo's parents argued that he was neither a flight risk nor a danger, and according to them, he didn't even have a passport, so it's not like he could have fled the country. And they said that keeping him on house arrest would allow him to be near his family and friends who would help, quote, keep him accountable. Those, again, are their words, not mine. But they say that the people in Karmelo's life will help keep him accountable. Now, on the other hand, some people have argued that even though Karmelo didn't have any prior arrests or convictions, he was allegedly involved in an altercation in school on February 4th of 2025, so a couple of months prior to the stabbing incident. Unfortunately, I don't know much that has been proven as fact about this altercation, but apparently it wasn't serious enough for law enforcement to get involved. I did see some rumors floating around that he allegedly had brought a knife to school once before, but I couldn't find anything to confirm it as true. And even if that did really happen and it was true, I don't know if that was the February incident that is being referred to, or if maybe that was a separate, unrelated incident. But all to say, everybody had an opinion in this. Everybody had a different take on whether it was fair or not for Karmelo to be out on bail at this point. And my personal opinion is that I see both sides of the argument. I see Austin's friends and family and advocates wanting Karmelo to remain behind bars because he's a threat, because he's impulsive. He reacted so quickly and so dangerously, and that is scary and that is risky and dangerous. Yet I also see Karmelo's side of the argument and his parents and him saying he's never had a bad history. He's a good student, good friend. He was provoked. This was self-defense. We'll put the ankle monitor on him, let him remain at home with his family. We will keep him accountable. I see both sides to it. And that is why it is so great that we have a judge who decides things in situations like this and not peers. And while there has been so much division out there about race and the politics of it all, I will say Austin's dad, Jeff, has been defending Karmelo. Well, kind of. I mean, obviously, it's not like he's okay with the fact that Karmelo stabbed his son. Obviously not at all. But he has come forward to tell people to stop making this political and about race, that this is not what this case should be about. Jeff even reached out directly.
And he's right. I mean, I totally agree with Jeff Metcalf about that. This case shouldn't be about race. It just so happens to be that Karmelo is black and Austin is white. But the jury should have come up with the same verdict, whether it's a black person killing a white person killing a black person killing a Hispanic or an Asian killing a white person. The verdict should have been the same. Given the same circumstance, the variables are the same. The verdict should have been the same. I think we can all agree on that, right? But there are certainly people that are basically saying no, because Karmelo is black, that changed the verdict. And I just don't buy it. I don't buy it.
To Jake Lang, the guy who wants to be the U.S. Senator who put that whole Protect White Americans protest together. And he told him, hey, take Austin's name and school picture off of your website. Take it off of your materials. I don't want Austin to be a part of anything that you're stirring up. Instead, he wanted the focus to solely be on getting Karmelo to trial and getting justice for Austin. That's it.
I want to clarify something right off the start, because I've already heard some rumors and gossip. This was not a race thing, and this is not a political thing.
Now, I think we can all agree the fact that Austin's family can't even focus on laying him to rest and grieving properly because they have to tell people who are claiming to be their supporters to stop is insane. If you are a supporter, leave the family alone if that's what they're requesting. And even though Jeff spoke out against it, the protest happened on April 19th. The organizer spoke with Jeff directly, and Jeff was not having it.
Yes, sir. What can I do for you?
Jeff, first of all, my entire heart rests in your hands. I would be in my position.
So this is the guy, Jake Lang. He is the Florida candidate for senator. There's going to be a special election coming up. They're trying to, Marco Rubio's seat is up. Ron DeSantis, he replaced Marco Rubio with someone else, but that person, a woman, I forget her name, she'll be in this special election coming up. But so is this guy. And this is his conversation here with Jeff Metcalf. So pay close attention to what he says here.
not even if somebody even knew your son, but somebody that it shares the same understanding. I grew up as a 17-year-old young white man too, and I grew up in fear of my life around black people because they were killing and robbing people around me all the time. And I don't understand, as I was a father, you could sit idly by and not condemn the culture that killed your son. There is an epidemic problem in this country, and your voice could be one of the loudest voices in this country, but you've chosen to recoil out of fear and continue the suppression.
Did you hear what he said? He's accusing Jeff Metcalf of recoiling out of fear and not standing by him to call out black on white violence or to protect white people. That's what he said. Pretty brazen to tell Jeff Metcalf that after his son has just been murdered. That's how you talk to him? Interesting. Let's see how it continues.
Why will you not stand with me and with the rest of the people? We're not calling for racial divide. We're not calling for hatred. We're saying 350,000 attacks on white people by black people a year in this country is wrong. Why can't you stand that and say with that? Maybe you can. Would you be willing to stand by me in a press conference or in an individual interview and talk about this issue that is larger than Austin at this point? God rest the beautiful young man's soul that would have been one of our strongest voices if he was still alive today.
Now, before Jeff answers, the interesting thing about this guy, Jake Lang, is he's a far-right person, but the issue for him is, he's a Jewish person. And if you're far-right, a lot of the far-right folks don't really like Jewish people at this point. The far-left folks, they don't like Israel. The far-right doesn't like Jewish people. So he's a Jewish person, and he's going to be trying to play this game. I can't see how well that goes for him. But that's a side note. But let's see what Jeff Metcalf says.
Are you done?
Yes, I am, sir.
Okay, my turn to speak. You are part of the problem, my friend. You're trying to create more race divide than bridging the gap. I do not condone anything you do. You do not have any.
That's called white guilt.
No, let it go. But my son, let me finish. I give you your time. You take my son's face off your website. I am not associated with you.
You're creating more Austin Metcalfs with your weakness, sir.
So Jake Lang tells Jeff Metcalf, you're creating more Austin Metcalfs with your weakness. Talk about an antagonistic, passive-aggressive remark there. That might even just be straight up aggressive, I should say. But Jeff Metcalf, to his credit, said, no, I'm not going to stand with you. I want you to take my son's picture off of your website. You're creating more of a race divide, and that's part of the fucking problem. And I would agree. I do agree with what Martin Luther King Jr. said. More judging by the content of someone's character, not the color of their skin. Now, I know the argument against that would be, well, if people are still being judged by the color of their skin, you can't be colorblind. And I would say, okay, but here's the thing. Just because there's some cases of racial injustice doesn't mean every case will be that. You have to push through it somehow. And unfortunately, what's happened recently is I actually kind of think there's more of a resurgence of racism recently. And, part of that's because of the rise of some far-right folks. It was more underground before, but now it's not as underground anymore. Like, notice on X and even Facebook and Instagram comment sections, there's a lot of people that have no problem saying some pretty wild stuff. It didn't used to be that way. Back in 2016 to 2020-ish, I didn't see that back then. But really, the last few years in particular, there's some wild things that are being said out there. Have you noticed?
You are creating more Austin Metcalfs with your weakness.
This whole thing was a mess. He's calling this grieving father weak. He's using racial slurs as a way to bolster his opinion and his point of view. And it is just appalling any way you look at it, in my opinion. I don't think that you can use murder as a way to justify any sort of white supremacy. And I'm not saying that that's exactly what he's doing, but it definitely comes across like that. Now, another thing about Jeff, Austin's dad, is there were some reports that he was supposedly arrested himself back in 2011 for sexual assault. However, I want to be clear, we researched it, we looked into it, and I have not been able.
And to be clear, I did say that I think Jeff Metcalf was a victim of reactive abuse in a way, where he was getting. Now, both sides were getting death threats in this case, by the way. Karmelo Anthony's family was getting death threats. So was Jeff Metcalf and Hunter, for that matter, as well. But I think both sides, I think with Jeff over time, he got accused of a lot of things, people disrespecting his son after he's dead. I think eventually he got upset, but understandably so, though, in my opinion. I can understand.
To verify this claim. The county sheriff's office even told us that there were no arrest records or a police incident report for any sort of arrest like that related to Jeff. So again, could this just be one more piece of wild misinformation that's been going around? Seems to be, because there's no evidence to back it up, at least nothing that we could find. And with our discussions with the sheriff's office, nothing that they have on record either. While we're on the topic of insane rumors, I also saw one story about Austin's cause of death. And if this wasn't such a serious case, I gotta say, this would almost be laughable, because the rumor goes that Austin didn't die from this stab wound that was really close to his heart, like witnesses saw and like we know happened, but rather from an MDMA overdose, which MDMA is like a drug, like a Molly GHB mixture cocktail. Like it's like this heavy drug, which I don't even understand how that could be slightly believable given what we know to be true about this incident. Yet that is what people are saying out there. Another rumor that is going around.
Now the police chief in Frisco, Texas, is calling for calm and calling for people to stop spreading misinformation about the case. His call to stop the rumors began after someone posted a fake autopsy online claiming that the victim was high on drugs and that the stabbing was not the primary cause of death. The police chief says none of that is true and posted, "Beware of those taking to social media to deliberately spread misinformation, hate, fear, and division."
That is well said. Beware of those taking to social media to deliberately spread misinformation, hate, fear, and division. Certainly no shortage of that these days. And also it happens from lies of omission as well. That's the trickiest one, because what is said is not a lie, but what is not said can completely influence how people see what is said. That's a big one.
With the rampant misinformation that's out there, the chaos and the hate has been spreading like wildfire. Karmelo has been getting hate mail, death threats. The rest of his family has also been on the receiving end of those. And it's been bad enough that they all had to address it at a press conference. And this was the first time that they held a public event like this for the press. So I'd imagine that none of them ever even wanted to be in this type of situation. Yet, given how out of hand all these nasty rumors and gossip are getting, they felt like they had no other choice but to confront it head on. Austin's dad, Jeff, even actually made an unexpected appearance before the conference even started, which you can imagine that caused a little bit of a ruckus because apparently Karmelo's family hadn't invited him, and they claimed that his presence there was a disrespect to the dignity of his own son. Yet Jeff argued that he simply wanted to be there to show that these two families were coming together in a productive way, that they didn't have to be enemies, they didn't have to fight each other, that they could be alliances together to get to the truth and to get justice for both of their sons. But the Anthony family, they weren't having it. They still asked Jeff to leave, and when he didn't, they warned him that he was going to be charged with trespassing if he didn't go away on his own.
Good afternoon. My name is Kayla Hayes. I am the mother of Karmelo Anthony.
So this is Karmelo's mom and dad here.
3 years ago, my family moved to North Texas searching for a better life. Like so many other families, we wanted to give our children the future we did not have. My husband worked hard every single day to provide for us, to make sure we're in the best financial position possible. As a stay-at-home mom, I made it my life's mission to ensure our children are loved, nurtured, and supported every step of the way.
I guess I'm getting old because she looks so young to me, but Karmelo is 17. So She looks like she's in her 20s, but she must probably be in her 30s at the least.
In wake of this tragic incident, our family has been under attack. Whatever you think what happened between Karmelo and the Metcalf boys, my 3 younger children, my husband, and I didn't do anything to deserve to be threatened, harassed, and lied about. The lies and false accusations that have been said about us, especially over the past week, has been overwhelming. The lies and their amplification put my family in danger, as well as everyone in our community, everyone involved in the investigation, from the police, the attorneys, and the court staff. Our address and my husband's previous employer's address has been put on all social media platforms. My husband had to take a leave of absence because he's afraid what may happen to our family. His mental health is deteriorating day by day. We have endured death threats. My 13-year-old daughter is afraid to sleep in her own bedroom because she's fearful of what may happen to her. And let me be clear, the claims that were used about the public donation to buy a home or anything else are completely false. We have not received a single dime from the Give, Send, Go fundraiser. And the co-founder has stated that clearly. In the reality, we were just notified yesterday that we could begin to withdraw funds. And it still takes several days to receive those funds once a request is made. I don't know why we are being targeted and discriminated against before a fair trial. Our son deserves the same rights under the law that everyone is afforded to. He's been raised in a 2-parent home with structure, stability, love, and we put God first in everything that we do. We believe in the Constitution, we believe in the laws of this state, but those laws must apply to all of us, not just some of us. To be clear, we will not speak publicly about specific details of what happened under the tent on that rainy and awful day. There's an active investigation that everyone involved wants to be full and fair. We believe in legal process, and that is where the truth will come out. To the family who experienced the loss, my heart truly goes out to you. To those who have supported my family, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We ask for your continued support, patience, and prayers as we navigate this difficult process. Thank you.
Now, regardless of which side of this case you stand on, I think we can all agree that that was a very emotionally charged speech that was given and statement. She was scared for her family and for her other children. She was nervous about the death threats. She just wanted her son to have a fair trial.
And to be clear, they shouldn't have been getting death threats. That being said, I mean, the process was the process from there.
Which did happen about a week ago now, and we're going to get into all of that shortly. And I also want to touch on something that you just heard in that clip. There's been rumors going around about the family misusing funds, and that has been another really polarizing issue in this case. Because after Karmelo's arrest, his family set up a fundraising account on something like a GoFundMe, but not that. This platform is called Give, Send, Go. Sort of like a Kickstarter, sort of like a GoFundMe, but basically where you crowdsource funds. And the description of the fundraiser said that it was for Karmelo's legal costs, because as we know, good lawyers do not come cheap. And they very quickly raised hundreds of thousands of dollars. But with that comes more issues. Like the saying goes, mo money, more problems, because of course, it took no time at all before rumors began spreading saying Karmelo's family was using this money to fund their lavish lifestyle, to rent a $900,000 home that's located in a gated community, to get a new luxury car, to hire private security, not using it for the defense attorneys and for the lawyers, but using it to fund their lifestyle. One of their neighbors allegedly also spoke out with a news outlet, staying anonymous, of course, claiming that the family bought a brand new Cadillac Escalade. And Cadillac Escalades have the sticker price of something like $150,000 right now. Supposedly, they parked it right in front of their driveway for like the whole world to see. Just very proud of this purchase too. So something about the funds being mishandled, and
it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good if you have a $150,000 Cadillac Escalade in front of your home after this, right?
misused is not sitting right with the public either. Again, just an allegation. Now, this alleged neighbor also said, quote, he got a new car. If you look at the license plate, it's got a paper tag and it says that it expires June 4th. Now, I'm not sure if the he that this neighbor is referring to is Karmelo or maybe Karmelo's dad, Andrew. But either way, they are claiming that it's one of the family members' cars and that it's a brand new purchase ever since they started raising all of this money. And the reason that that detail about the paper tag that expires on June 4th is so important is because in Texas, paper tags or temporary license plates are only good for 60 days. So if they had temporary plates that expired on June 4th, that would mean that they bought the car on April 4th, which was just 2 days after the stabbing took place. And look, I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a moment because...
And if that's what happened, that's just not going to look good because at that point, there's two different questions. Bail and then paying for the lawyer. They're going to go over the bail part in a minute, but either way, it's just the optics that won't look good. Sort of like Sheriff Nanos at the basketball game within a week. Okay, we get it. You're not going to be at work 24/7, but the optics of you having leisure time at a basketball game while Nancy Guthrie's still missing within a week of that happening, it just doesn't look good. Optics matter to the public.
You've got to admit, the rumors look pretty bad if they are true. So I decided to dig a little deeper and see if there really was anything to these rumors. And here's what I found. First, this is something I mentioned earlier, but Karmelo's bail was originally set at $1 million. Then it got reduced to $250,000. Apparently, this was because his dad Andrew claimed at the bond hearing that the family was going through a financial hardship. They couldn't pay the original bail. It wasn't fair for it to be so high. It needed to be lowered. The judge, of course, asked them why they couldn't just use the money for this bail amount with the money that they had raised online, which his dad, Andrew, replied that they couldn't use it for bail because that's not what it was for, that those donations were specifically to go to Karmelo's legal fees. That said, he did admit that they did use some of that money for non-legal things. Specifically, security at their house was one of the things that they used this money on after they started receiving
security at their house is understandable, especially once you've been getting death threats.
And then they also apparently had to move because their home address had been doxxed. And what doxing is when your personal information, whether it's your phone number, your address, your workplace, any private personal information is publicly available online and published online and kind of spammed all over the place. So what he's saying is that their home address had been doxed. So because of that, random strangers learned where they lived. So with that coupled with the death threats, they had no other option but...
And Shadow wants me to remind you all to like the video, please, because likes are free. Love tap that like button or smack the like button, whichever you prefer. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Come say hello to the awesome flock of black sheep in the live chat here. We even have our favorite friend living in the chat here, watching dogs as we speak. Good to see her. And also, members only live stream tomorrow, a little bit after 8 p.m. Eastern, more than likely. That'll be a Q&A and a Chill&A. And as always, the super chat, super stickers, people who become a channel member or gift channel memberships, great ways to support the channel. They all help me pay for Shadow the Night Owl here, soy-free Hootie Snacks. And again, thank you very much for all of the support I've been getting so far.
To relocate temporarily or maybe even more long-term. So Karmelo's lawyer spoke out saying, quote, it would be disingenuous to say there isn't money, but it's not a bond fund. This family needs to be able to survive. So again, it seems clear to me that a lot of these rumors are just misinformation or vastly exaggerated. I think it's things people are just making up to muddy the waters and to make a case that's already pretty complicated even harder to understand. So I guess it all has to be taken with a grain of salt, and you can each decide for yourself what you believe here. But when it comes to the hate being shown toward both Karmelo and his family, I think it's important to be clear that Austin's family has never encouraged the hate or the harassment of any of it. If anything, they have publicly been trying to neutralize it. They never supported in or participated in any of the protests. They never told people to send death threats. They never told anybody to dox them, to get involved, nothing.
We haven't really had a chance to talk to you about this. You had mentioned a few times that you had forgiven the suspect for what
correct.
He did.
I do.
But we just informed you about these documents. And
that doesn't change anything. This has to do with me and God. God teaches us in the Bible. He talks about forgiveness. He also talks about revenge. Not for me to seek. God will take care of it. Karma, I believe in it. It's very unfortunate that this other child decided to make a bad choice that's going to affect him for the rest of his life. I have compassion for every human being. This is not, I want to make this very clear. This is not a race issue. This is not a black and white issue. I don't want someone stepping up on a soapbox trying to politicize this. I don't appreciate some of the remarks I've seen online that people say there was this fight and they don't know. They weren't there. I know the truth. So unless you were there, unless you saw it, don't spread gossip.
My focus of my story is, of course, on Austin. That is what's most important. But what would you say about the suspect and what's next?
I don't know anything about him. We have nothing to say.
I've never met this kid until right then. It really was under 30 seconds, this altercation. I've never met this kid in my entire life. And it's just...
And to be honest with you, we don't want to give him any recognition or any care because we have no desire to have anything to do.
And that was big. Hunter just said we didn't even know who he was. They'd never seen him before.
With that man.
So let's get into the trial, everything that happened through that, all of the witness testimony, and what the final verdict was. And this trial happened about a year after the murder. Now, some of the testimony that came out was pretty jaw-dropping, I do have to say. Now, for starters, before anyone even took the stand, there was already a lot of controversy surrounding the jury itself. And the reason why is because the official sitting jury did not include any Black jurors. The jury pool was originally narrowed down from around 600 people to roughly 250 possible jurors. Then, by the final decision, there were only 3 Black jurors left that could have possibly been picked. However, they were ultimately ruled out. Now, the defense attorneys challenged this, and I understand why. They were accusing the prosecutors, too, of, quote, improperly striking the last 3 remaining Black jurors from the panel. However, the state pushed back on their claim, arguing that those jurors were removed because they were educators, not because of their race. The judge also ultimately agreed with the prosecution, and they denied the defense's challenge. Now, because race has been such a heavily discussed part of this case from the very beginning, as we went through with the different press conferences, the statements, and everything that was kind of going on with some people, not everybody, but agenda-wise, you remember we talked about that earlier. The decision to not have any Black jurors, or I shouldn't say the decision, but the way that shook out, it instantly and immediately became a huge talking point online. A lot of people were divided with this. People agreed with it. Some didn't. I understand why the defense pushed so hard, but ultimately, like I said, the judge ruled with the prosecution. So then the trial begins and testimony started, and things got interesting really fast. One of the prosecution's witnesses was a 17-year-old teammate of Austin's who testified that he witnessed the confrontation firsthand. And this testimony was a pretty big deal because he told the jurors that Karmelo already had a folding knife out and in his hand before Austin allegedly shoved him.
That's a big part of testimony there, if it's true, right? He testified that the knife was already out. Interesting.
which that was a big revelation because that meant that if the jury believed that testimony, it completely contradicts the defense's argument that Karmelo only pulled that knife out in self-defense after becoming fearful during that physical altercation or physical confrontation. So throughout this, and like I said, there was a lot of testimony and a lot of witnesses. I believe there were 21 witness statements in total. Another student athlete who was 16 years old at the time also testified about what happened in the moments leading up to the stabbing. He told the jurors that he was sitting under the memorial tent with Austin and with some of their other teammates when Karmelo first walked up. And I guess that when Karmelo walked up, he sat down next to him and randomly said, "Crazy weather, huh?" Which the witness said that everybody was confused because they didn't know Karmelo. He also wasn't part of their team. He went to a different school, so they didn't really understand why he was there in the first place. Now, is that super damning? Not necessarily. Like, yes, it could be weird that somebody's coming into your tent and like sitting down if they don't belong there. However, it's also raining. Everybody's under the tents because of the rain. So I could see where if somebody's trying to like duck under a tent, you're going to make small talk, right? Like, crazy weather, huh? Like, because you're trying to shield yourself from the rain. I don't know. I just don't think that that was like a huge aha moment of he came into the tent in a threatening way. However, according to that testimony, the group asked Karmelo to leave and he refused. The witness claimed that Karmelo became very aggressive and said, quote, "Fuck y'all. I'm not going to leave. Y'all are a bunch of pussies. Y'all aren't going to do anything. Touch me and see what happens."
So that line there, that whole thing ending with "touch me and see what happens," it becomes very tough to play self-defense then. Once you've said those things and you already have a knife in your hand, apparently too. Again, it was certainly an uphill battle for the defense.
And what really stood out to me is what the witness says Austin said back to Karmelo. Because according to his testimony, Austin's response wasn't, "Let's fight," or like, "Fuck you," or anything like that. The witness says that Austin told him, "I'm not going to fight you." One teenage witness, and I'm not sure if this is the exact same witness or another, because like I said, there were 21, but another statement, I should say, that was testified to is that Austin told Karmelo, quote, "You don't even have anything in that backpack. It's Frisco." Now, the reason
So Austin said, "I'm not going to fight you, and you don't even have anything in that backpack." So again, if he says that, it becomes difficult for Karmelo to say self-defense.
bring that up is because earlier in this episode, we talked about how people said Karmelo was reaching into his backpack and then that's when he grabbed the knife, although another witness testified he already had the knife out. But I think this goes to show that through this statement, at least, that what they're trying to suggest and imply is that Austin didn't feel like this was a dangerous or life-threatening situation, kind of being like, you know, you don't have anything in that backpack. We're in Frisco, for Christ's sake, like something like that, you know? Obviously, that is not the truth. So then through the trial came the medical examiner's testimony. And this was probably one of the most emotional moments of the trial because jurors were told that Austin's cause of death was, of course, that single stab wound to the chest. And the medical examiner also testified that the knife went through his breastbone, entered his chest cavity, and then pierced the right side of his heart.
Shadow and I do hate hearing the details. We're not very good at blood and guts. That's what Julie Bug is for.
The wound through the heart wall was described as being approximately 2 inches long, meaning that was an incredible amount of force to pass through the breastbone, enter the chest cavity, and then pierce the heart and have a wound 2 inches long. Like that is an incredible amount of force going in. The medical examiner also didn't leave much room for interpretation, and they testified that the injury was simply not survivable. Another thing that really stood out during the trial was that Karmelo chose not to testify in his own defense. Now, this happens. We know that usually, I'll say, defendants won't take the stand because they don't want to do anything that could hurt their case or potentially, you know, have hard questions coming their way to where their answers could be misconstrued or misinterpreted. And Not testifying is absolutely his constitutional right, and some argue that it's more strategic not to testify. But of course, it's always something that people notice in high-profile cases, and it certainly did not go unnoticed in this case. So he didn't testify. And now here's where it got interesting, because it wrapped up way sooner than I expected, and a lot quicker than I think anyone expected, because the prosecution rested its case on Saturday, June 6th. Then, the following Monday, the defense started presenting their case. They started at 9 a.m. that Monday morning. However, they rested their case just 5.5 hours later, same day. Then, the next Tuesday, closing arguments happened. This also was incredibly fast. So fast that it didn't even last all day long. It started with closing arguments, then it went to a verdict, then it went to the sentencing phase. So it was a jam-packed day. And what's really interesting is that even though the closing arguments didn't take very long and they went, pretty quickly, what was interesting throughout that portion of the trial is that it was announced that the jury was allowed to consider manslaughter in all of this, not murder. And this was a major development because the judge instructed jurors that they could convict Karmelo of either murder or the lesser offense of manslaughter, which of course the defense had hoped that this revelation, this announcement, would give the jurors a middle ground option to come together on, that they wouldn't have to just do all or nothing, right? However, as I said, closing arguments went quickly. It then went off to the jury and a verdict was returned. And the jury only deliberated for 3 hours. Ultimately, they found Karmelo guilty of murder. Now, one thing that many people who were watching this trial were focused on is not so much what the jury did decide, but rather what they didn't decide. Because in that moment, the conversation then became, they were given a path to manslaughter, but they chose murder instead, which is often interpreted as a sign that the jury rejected that entire core argument of self-defense and that theory, rather than, merely finding that he overreacted in the moment and it was a crime of passion. They could have met on that middle ground, but they chose murder instead, which under a guilty murder verdict, that means that he was going to face a punishment range of 5 to 99 years or life in prison, whereas a manslaughter conviction would have carried a sentence of 2 to 20 years in prison. Now, right when this happened, his mom testified literally moments after he was found guilty, and she told the jury that she knows that her son is very sorry for what he did. So then came the sentencing phase, which it moved into almost immediately. And within just a few hours, the sentencing came back. And the jury sentenced Karmelo to 35 years in prison. He will be eligible for parole after half of that time is served, which is, about 17 and a half years. And I have seen a lot of people on social media say that they think that that is, I don't know if poetic is the right word, but because Austin was that same age, that at least he will be incarcerated for amount of years that Austin was alive. And again, I'm not saying I believe one way or another that this sentencing, means it's poetic or not. I don't think that that's the right word, but I just want to point out that that is what people are suggesting. However, as you can imagine, there is a lot of division regarding this, not only the guilty verdict, but the sentencing. There was fighting erupting outside of the courtroom. There were fights in the streets. People who are angry that Karmelo was found guilty. People who are angry that he wasn't sentenced to life in prison. There's just so much division. And in a statement, Austin's dad spoke out and he addressed Karmelo directly as well. And he said, "We were robbed. Don't look down. We were robbed of all of these things. I said from day one, this was never about race. Please don't politicize it. But what you choose to do, both, it's right and wrong. We're all humans. We all bleed the same color. You're free to make choices all you want, but you're not free from those consequences. You will face those consequences starting today." People think that grief is sadness, but it's not. It's a rage. And at this point, he slammed his hands down on the table and he said, "Pure, unfiltered rage."
Honestly, it kind of seems like Karmelo was trying to start trouble for no reason, according to all of the testimony. So he came over there, they told him to leave, but to teenage boys, being told to leave can be a horrific offense. And it's almost like a dominance competition. Oh, no, I'm not going to let you guys tell me to leave. Because let's face it, if he just leaves, none of this happens. If he just pushes him or punches him even, none of this happens. It only happened because of the disproportionate force that he used. And again, disproportionate's the key word. I just think it was just ridiculous. It just didn't need to be that way. But granted, I mean, a lot of murders are ridiculous for that matter. I mean, do you think the loved ones of Spencer and Monique Tepe are going to say what Michael McKee did wasn't ridiculous? Of course it was ridiculous. He came in there and killed both of them, allegedly. But he'll probably be convicted of that. I don't know how that trial's going. He might even get, it might even be a death penalty case, for all I know. But all murders are ridiculous. And because if it wasn't a murder, it would be called something else. Now, a famous killing that everyone always shows on Father's Day is the Louisiana airport killing, where this guy kidnapped this guy's son and SA'd him. And then when they had him and he was arrested walking through the airport, the dad shoots him dead. That guy didn't spend 1 day in jail because the courts in Louisiana said, well, it was very reasonable considering what that guy did to his son. And the guy who did it, he never apologized once. And all he said was, you would do the same. You would do the same if you were me. And he's probably not wrong. Not everyone would do it, but he did it. And he didn't do a day of jail. He just had to do community service. And he mowed the church's lawn that he went to. That was it.
You failed your parents, you failed yourself, and you failed society. You don't belong in this community, he says directly to Karmelo. You're going to prison. You can't even look me in the eyes right now, but you can stab my fucking son in the heart. And like I said, guys, I mean, there is so much division out there. A lot of people, too, I saw posting sentiments saying, you know, what if when Karmelo had gone under the tent, if someone had just made small talk with him and said, hey, stay here and get warm a little longer. Or if Karmelo had come in and instead of being allegedly aggressive, had said something like, hey, guys, can I just duck out here from the rain for a couple of minutes? Or if there was some sort of mutually kind exchange to where it didn't erupt into such a fast moment of violence and a senseless moment of violence that has effectively destroyed two families completely. And look, it's controversial. I know so many of you are going to disagree with one another. Please keep it respectful. It's an incredibly devastating case for everyone involved. So obviously a very devastating case and two young boys' lives who essentially are now completely lost.
But the argument against Austin walking away was it was his team's tent. Like it was their team. Why would they walk away from their own tent?
I mean, one, physically, yes, Austin lost his life. Another, locked up. And still a lot of division out there. Still a lot of people feeling like this wasn't handled the right way, or that this was self-defense, or that it wasn't and it should have been harsher, or there's just so much conversation out there. It's a very polarizing case. And I'm curious to know what you've heard about this case, or where, even if you're hearing about this case for the first time, where you sit with this. Please be kind to one another in the comments if you disagree. At the end of the day, I think it's a tragedy. No matter how you look at it, it's just senseless. It's two young men who had their whole lives ahead of them. And it just shows you how quickly violence can happen in the blink of an eye. And I just can't help but think, too, about Austin's brother just lying there with him in those moments. And you heard his soul leaving his body, feeling that himself because they're twins. And it's so incredibly heartbreaking. It's devastating for everyone involved.
But that doesn't account for any of Karmelo's antagonizing. Fuck you all, you fucking pussies, fucking this, fucking that, touch me and see what happens. It's like, that's a massive escalation, if you ask me. It's certainly not like de-escalating like Austin tried to do.
just a reminder that senseless crime happens everywhere, all the time. So please just be safe, protect yourselves, and I don't know.
But again, okay, so Austin shoves him. Why doesn't Karmelo get an adult then instead of stabbing him? The same logic can go back that way too.
I'm curious to know your thoughts. Now, before you go, quick reminder, merch right now, AnnieElise.com. Get it before it is completely gone. So thank you so much for tuning in to another episode with me today. I will be back with you this Thursday with headline highlights where we are going through an all.
The eyewitness said it, Livin. The eyewitness said it in this video. She went over it. The eyewitness said what I just said he said is what the eyewitness said.
All new case, or cases, I should say, and case updates. But let me know what you think about this one. All right, guys, thank you so much. And until the next one, be nice. Don't kill people.
I don't think so, Chatty Cathy. I think it can be what it is.
Austin fell onto Karmelo's knife trying to attack him because the knife is 3.5 inches. The cut was only 2. Loon, if I'm stabbing you, why am I going halfway with a knife blade that's only 3.5 inches? You fell onto my knife.
That was from transcripts, though. That's where she just got it from. Annie Elise, she just read it in this video. What the eyewitness said in the transcripts is what she said it came from. She said it on the stand. That guy said it on the stand.
Knife. Regardless, Loon, do you really think those 2 black boys who fell on that white boy's knife?
Time out, bro. I can't do it. I got to get my haircut. My barber here fell on a knife. There ain't no human being on planet Earth out of 21 witnesses said that he fell on a knife. Karmelo Anthony's defense isn't arguing that he fell on a knife. Nobody's saying that these black people cannot take accountability for nothing. Now the boy then fell on somebody's knife.
Welcome to the special edition of Straight Shooter, coming at you as I love to do, at least twice a week over the airways of YouTube, of course. Of course, you know my POTUS show is every Wednesday night from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time over the airways of SiriusXM POTUS Radio. That was Officer Tatum responding to Dr. Umar Johnson, who was talking about what transpired with the whole Karmelo Anthony situation. You know, the kid, he was 17 at the time. He's 19 now. He was recently convicted of first-degree murder based off of, because in April of 2025, he fatally stabbed a fellow high school student, high school athlete, Austin Metcalf, in the chest during an altercation at a track meet in Frisco, Texas. A jury convicted Anthony of murder on June 9th and 10th of this year, rejecting his self-defense claim and sentenced him to 35 years in prison. Now, as we all know, I definitely had my reservations about that sentencing. I remember the case involving Casey Allison, who in May of 2022 was also a Texas high school student and fatally stabbed a classmate.
You think he's foreshadowing? Is Stephen A. Smith foreshadowing his presidential bid with the White House in the background? Or is that a Capitol building in the background? There's the Capitol building.
Bill Ramirez during a confrontation in a Belton High School bathroom. He ultimately was acquitted of murder and manslaughter, but convicted of criminally negligent homicide, where he was sentenced in June of 2025 to a maximum 10 years in prison. So he murdered somebody, he's getting 10 years. Karmelo Anthony murdered somebody, he's getting 35 years. And that discrepancy has a lot of people in an uproar and what have you. Apparently one of those people is Dr. Umar Johnson. Now, I listen to what he said there. And let me state this. I respect him. I respect the man. I respect his intelligence. Officer Tatum, I'm not going to emulate you. I'm certainly not going to disrespect Dr. Umar Johnson. I'm not going to call him an idiot or question his intelligence. I will say, however, he's definitely out there with the stuff that he was saying. I heard no evidence of Karmelo Anthony or Austin Metcalf falling into a knife. I heard no evidence of that whatsoever. And there were 21.
By the way, this is Stephen A. Smith. We've gone over him before. But Shadow wants me to remind you all to like the video because likes are free. Love, tap that like button. Say hello to the flock of black sheep. And tomorrow night, a little bit after 8 p.m. Eastern, members only live stream, Q&A. And as always, super chats, super stickers, and becoming a channel member or gifting channel memberships. Great ways to support the channel. And Shadow and I thank you very much for all of the support we've gotten so far.
People, who was considered for the jury. You had your grand jury testimony and all of this other stuff going on. And there was 21 people that were talked to. There were witnesses that were in attendance. Nobody talked about Austin Metcalf falling into a knife. I don't know where that comes from. And obviously because of how severe the penalty was, 35 years in prison, we're going to take into account history from an historical perspective, from a racist perspective, and we're not going to be uncomfortable with the discrepancy that exists between somebody like Casey Allison compared to a Karmelo Anthony. I got that part. But that doesn't give us a license to then turn around and to just come up with stuff that might have been, as opposed to listening to the evidence that was actually disseminated and making reaching a conclusion based off of that. Karmelo Anthony was quoted as saying to Austin Metcalf, "Put your hands on me and find out what's going to happen." To be clear, he was in a tent because it was raining outside at a track meet. And he was in a visiting team's tent, not his own. And Austin Metcalf was one of the people that walked up to him and said, "Yo, man, you need to go to your own spot. You don't need to be up in here." And according to witnesses and Karmelo Anthony himself, he said, "Put your hands on me and see what's going to happen." According to a coach, in the aftermath of the incident, he walked up to Karmelo Anthony and asked him what happened. And Karmelo Anthony said, "Hey, he put his hands on me, so I stabbed him." So he told you what he was going to do before he did it. Then he ended up doing it. And now we're hearing all of these conspiracy theorists coming out here talking about this stuff, ignoring the evidence. Now, again, Officer Tatum, I'm not going to go your route because we can simply...
Officer Tatum, for those who don't know, conservative black man. I've heard him on the radio. He's also a very pro-Israel Zionist as well, for that matter. Stephen A. Smith is probably in the middle, I would say. He's certainly no leftist, but he's in the middle, I think. If he were to run, he would probably run as a Democrat, though. He'd probably run as a Democrat, but he would be more of a centrist Democrat.
Disagree. We don't have to engage in insulting anybody here. You've got people that are emotionally invested because they see a system that they think is inequitable and unequal, and as a result, they react accordingly because yet another black kid is going down with a level of severity that isn't being shared by somebody who isn't black, but comes across as having committed the same crime. Now, there's different circumstances. One involved a fight that both volunteered to confront one another about. One was getting the better of the other. Ultimately, a stabbing took place. A killing occurred. And as a result of that killing, Allison got 10 years in prison because of criminally negligent homicide as opposed to manslaughter or murder. Karmelo Anthony went the route of self-defense through the advice of his lawyers and ultimately ended up being convicted of first-degree murder. As far as I'm concerned, it wasn't a jury of his peers because there was nobody black on the jury. I got all of that. There's nobody black on the jury. That's not a jury of your peers, even though there's no law that stipulates your peers means that your ethnicity has to be shared. I do understand that. But I think it would be nice if you're going to call it a jury of your peers, that it needs to be some people up there that look a little bit like you, that shares your pigmentation, your hue, your ethnicity. I think that's fair, in my opinion. But again, no laws were violated in terms of the makeup of that jury.
So the big question about that would be, what would have a black juror saw that the white, Hispanic, or Asian jurors wouldn't have seen? What would they have seen differently? That's the million-dollar question. And hey, if anyone has an answer for that, I'd be all ears. But what would a black juror see, considering all the facts and evidence that the other people didn't see?
Having said all of that, The reason why this point is relevant right now is because of a very uncomfortable truth. The uncomfortable truth is that, once again, we find ourselves dropping the ball a little bit, dare I say. His lawyer, who was that going to be? Did we do our due diligence? The makeup of the jury, did we do our due diligence? The charges that were ultimately going to be filed against him, what he was indicted for, what he was going to be prosecuted for. Did we have the right people in place to make sure that wasn't putting Karmelo Anthony at a considerable advantage? Did we do all of those things?
Shouty Cathy, I think it just could really be immaturity, carelessness, plus your frontal lobe and your brain not being fully developed. And understand, I mean, young men, they're young boys with lots of raging hormones and testosterone. Women might not get it, but with guys, those kinds of fights escalate into killings all of the time. All of the time. I mean, many times in inner cities and gangs, but there's people of all races in gangs. There's biker gangs where those kinds of things happen all the time. There's Crips and Bloods. There's all of that. So it doesn't take much. And it's just ego plus immaturity plus frontal lobe in your brain not fully developed plus maybe a little bit of dark triad action. And then before you know it, someone's dead.
Well, we're a bit late to the party in that regard. And considering that one could argue that we were late to the party in that regard, for those who want to support Karmelo Anthony, who want to act like a crime wasn't committed, who want to act like he was completely provoked, instead of bringing up the fact that he had no business having a knife at a track meet, instead of acknowledging the fact that he was in no real perceived danger in terms of his life being threatened, in terms of acknowledging the fact that under no circumstances, based on the evidence of what has happened, did it warrant him stabbing somebody in the chest. If we're going to sit up there and we're going to ignore those things, here's what we can't ignore. Here's what's unavoidable. People are going to bring this up too. Where's all this noise over what happened in Chicago on Juneteenth? What's the relevancy for that? The relevancy for that is that we're arguing and going off and expressing hell and fury over the conviction of a guy who acknowledged he admitted he committed the crime. Told the police it's not alleged. I did it. Because he put his hands on me, so I did it, according to the reports. We've got people all over the place going off, talking about police officers, talking about the court system, talking about the inequity within our legal system, et cetera, et cetera. But 39 people get shot on Juneteenth. 6 are killed. And we're not hearing anything. Why is that? I bring up Juneteenth, ladies and gentlemen, to remind you what Juneteenth is. It's a U.S. holiday that commemorates the end of slavery in the United States. That's what Juneteenth is. Juneteenth, June 19th, Emancipation Proclamation issued by Abraham Lincoln in January of 1863. This is what we're talking about. June 19th, 1865, 2 years ago, Union General, reading from here, Union General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas, and announced that enslaved people in Texas were free. This date is what became known as Juneteenth. You know how as black folks, we sit up there and we talk about it's Malcolm X Boulevard, it's Martin Luther King Boulevard, and that's usually where violence takes place? That's what they're saying about Juneteenth right now. 39 people shot. 6 killed. And what are we saying? You got more people arguing about Karmelo Anthony than this. And I'm not getting into, oh, you know what? It's black on black. Wait a minute. White people kill white people. Hispanics kill Hispanics. The people you live with, the people you live amongst, the people you live around, that's where violence usually take place amongst one another. I know that. I don't care about that. I care about us, our community right now, as it pertains to this subject.
And he's right to even bring this up. He's not wrong. He's not going to make many friends in the black community, though, saying that. But he's also not wrong. I mean, if that's what happened on Juneteenth, I think he said 6 of them killed, 39 people shot. Is that what he said? I mean, that's a lot of people.
What we going to do, peoples? I'm talking to black people. What we going to do? Barack Obama had his presidential center opened this past Friday. We all celebrating it. And we got nothing to say about 39 black folks, 39 people rather getting shot, 6 fatally. How about this? Let me read some numbers to you because I think it's important. It's only right. Chicago, in the year 2024, recorded 580 homicides in that 1 year alone, with black residents accounting for roughly 3/4 to 4/5 of the victims. The racial safety gap remains stark. The University of Chicago Crime Lab reports that in 2025, black Chicagoans had a homicide rate of nearly 40 per 100,000 residents, compared with less than 2 per 100,000 residents for white residents.
It's a pretty high number. 40 per 100,000?
That means black residents were more than 20 times more likely to be homicide victims. Chicago Public Schools directs additional resources to high poverty neighborhoods with operational spending ranging from roughly $19,000 to $22,000 per student. Yet the city continues to lose hundreds of black lives to violence each year. Even after total homicides fell to 416 in the year 2025 from the 580 in 2024, black residents still accounted for the overwhelming majority of victims. Where's the noise about that? It's not politics. It's not policy. I'm a black man concerned about black people because we make up 13% of the population. So if we made up 57% of the population, like the white community does, deaths don't affect us numbers-wise the way that it affects the black community. Since the Hispanic community is the dominant minority in this country, it doesn't affect them numbers-wise compared to the way that it affects us. We keep allowing this stuff to go on in the streets of Chicago or St. Louis or anywhere else where it's prevalent. We're going to be a damn endangered species. Got nothing to say? I'm very sorry about Karmelo Anthony. I don't like the fact that he got 35 years.
Now, Shadow and I have always talked about the fact that if you really wanted to get rid of that gang violence and whatever, what would you do? How would you do it? Would you legalize drugs? And would that eliminate a lot of it? Because that is the number one currency in a lot of gangs, is drugs. People sell drugs. That's the number one income maker in those kinds of gangs. But if you legalize drugs, would that kind of eliminate some of the issue? Now, granted, there's always going to be people looking to do things criminally. So what would they do instead? And some people would argue, okay, weed's legal in a lot of states, but there's still an underground market for weed too. So even if you legalized all drugs, there still would probably be some underground markets for it, but it just wouldn't be as prevalent, I would say. But what else? I mean, seriously, what are the solutions to this? Shadow and I are all ears.
I really, really don't. Not when I think about Case and Allison. Not when I think about Kyle Rittenhouse. Remember him, August 2020? During unrest in Kenosha, Wisconsin. He's 17 years old at the time. He shot and killed 2 people and wounded a third while claiming self-defense. And then in November of 2021, the jury acquitted him on all charges, including homicide and reckless endangerment, finding he acted in self-defense. I don't like that discrepancy. Not one bit. That's why I mentioned it. Don't like the Trayvon Martin thing. I still remember that from 2012. Sanford, Florida. Neighborhood watch volunteer George Zimmerman fatally shot Trayvon Martin. He was 17 years old, who was unarmed and walking home. After a confrontation, Zimmerman claimed self-defense, got acquitted of second-degree murder and manslaughter. You think I forgot that? I did not. I'm still sitting here saying to you right now, Karmelo Anthony is different than that. He had a knife that he brought to a track meet. Life wasn't in danger. And he said, put your hands on me and see what happens. A shove ended up into a...
The African proverb, Miss Kim, is those who don't feel the warmth of the village, or those who don't, excuse me, I said it wrong. It says those who don't feel the love of the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. Something like that.
Killing. Which is why you see the polarization that you're witnessing. Because on one hand, you have somebody like a Dr. Umar Johnson, who, by the way, is highly intelligent, by the way, Officer Tatum. I'm not going to call him names and disrespect a man like that. I just don't understand why he's going this route. But it is fair to show what he had to say in both of these videos and Officer Tatum's response to both of these videos. Play that for us, please.
I want you to see how white supremacy operates behind the scenes. You can't challenge the grand jury, Loon, because you don't even know who they are.
Right.
So the people who decided this 17-year-old would be charged with murder are complete secrets. And you and I both know they all white. Are you with me? So first, deal with the grand jury. Him being charged with murder was a crime in and of itself.
So what do you say about the
Let me give you one more. You're moving too fast. Hold on. In Texas.
And I would say weed, though, of all the drugs, the weed business is probably the least violent, but the heroin, crack, and cocaine and meth business, very violent. Party drugs, ecstasy, Molly. I'm not so sure about that. I don't associate a lot of festival drugs with that kind of violence, but I do associate the violence with like the street corner drug use, crack, coke, heroin, meth. Those four in particular are pretty dangerous. Also, then you can add PCP to the mix. That's also pretty dangerous.
If you're 17, you're automatically tried as an adult. Grand jury had no control over that. Are you with me?
Yes.
He was 17. He's automatically tried as an adult, but he doesn't automatically have to be indicted with murder. That could have been aggravated, right? Manslaughter.
Right.
There's a whole list of crimes they could have went with.
So you're saying he should have been charged, just not with...
Time out. I think he went to Ignorant Black Folk University and got his doctorate degree, honorary. He didn't even study to do that. He got an honorary degree from a fake university where dumb black people go. What do you mean? They had a choice. The grand jury don't try to find charges for you. They have a probable cause statement from law enforcement to the prosecution, and they present it to the grand jury. They're presenting murder to the grand jury, and they're giving the elements of a crime that implicates him on murder charges. The grand jury evaluates the evidence and determines, is this prosecutable based on what was explained. They don't just pick charges for you when you just say, Karmelo Anthony got into a fight, and they go, let me see what charge we want to do. Liquor law violation. Like, they don't go like that. Umar Johnson would know that because he's a stewhead.
Austin fell onto Karmelo's knife trying to attack him because the knife is 3.5 inches. The cut was only 2. Loon, if I'm stabbing you, why am I going halfway with a knife blade that's only 3.5 inches? You fell onto my knife. Regardless, Loon, do you really think those 2 black boys who fell on that white boy's knife?
Time out, bro. I can't do it. I got to get my haircut. My barber here, He fell on a knife. There ain't no human being on planet Earth out of 21 witnesses said that he fell on a knife. Karmelo Anthony's defense isn't arguing that he fell on a knife. Nobody's saying that these black people cannot take accountability for nothing. Now the boy then fell on somebody's knife.
That's the problem right there. You see, ultimately, we got to pick our battles. We got to be better than that. What we going to do, got to come together to resolve some of these issues. What's the best way to do it? First order of business is to be real. To be real about the evidence that we're looking at and go from there and pick our fights and pick our battles. It's important to do that. Again, I don't like the idea of Karmelo Anthony being sentenced to 35 years at all. I don't like the makeup of the jury, not having an African-American on it at all. I get it. I understand. And I don't know all of the specifics that went into the jury ultimately being made up of what it was made up of. I'm quite sure that there were blacks that were interviewed and before being placed on the jury, before the decision was made as to who would be placed on the jury and who wasn't. But the point of the matter is that I don't like it. I don't like the look. I don't like the optics because we're here having these questions. But what's inescapable and what's undeniable is that Karmelo Anthony said he put his hands on me, so I stabbed him. He said it's not alleged. I did it. Confessed to doing so and told people he did so. Not only that, there were witnesses that saw it happen. Not only that, Austin Metcalf's brother was there. And his brother died right in front of him. So when we sit up here and we think about the battles that need to be fought, we got to be mindful of what's worth fighting for and what's not worth fighting for. I'm talking about the merits of the case, not the human being. Because all of us are God's children. And my heart goes out to Karmelo Anthony and his family. I wish this didn't happen. I wish that he's not going to spend at least the next 17 years in prison, barring an appeal that's won. But he killed someone. And his argument of self-defense in the jury's eyes didn't hold weight. We can try to fight and fight and fight over that. But you know what? If you're going to fight as vigilantly, as diligently over that, how come we not fighting about what's happening in Chicago? Why we ain't fighting about that? Why we got the president calling out the governor of Illinois? Why is that? Look at what the president said. Look at what Donald Trump said. Lots of killing going on in Chicago. 22 people shot. That number was wrong. It was more than that. At least 4 people dead. That number was wrong. It was more than that. Why isn't Governor Pritzker calling me for help? I could make Chicago a safe city in 1 month, in 1 year. It would be one of the safest. D.C. went from one of the worst to one of the safest cities in the United States. Once again, self-aggrandizement, taking anything that he can to make it about him instead of about the real issue. You understand? Showing that the narcissism has no limits, but that's your president and mine.
Stephen A is not wrong about that. But that being said, Stephen A also makes a good point about what people choose to focus on. People don't focus on that as much because of the dynamics of what's going on with it. That's black on black crime. People get a little more of a rush when it's a case like this, some sort of injustice. But again, you'd have to ask them why. Like, why do you care more about this than this? I'll be curious their answer if they're honest about it.
He is the president of the United States. It's just a damn shame that he's that petty, but that's neither here nor there. It doesn't make him wrong. Now, do I believe that the president should go in to put the National Guard into a city against the will of the mayor and against the will of the governor and against the will of the people? Absolutely, positively not. Do I believe, however, that Governor Pritzker should be asking for resources from the federal government, from the president himself, to make sure that the streets of Chicago are safe? Yes, I do. And if I recall correctly, I've had Governor Pritzker on this show, and he acknowledged just as much. He specified it doesn't need to be the National Guard. It needs to be other things, and I get that part, but there is no denying that help is needed. How many times are we going to hear about folks getting killed in the streets of Chicago? How many times? And if we care about black lives, we need to care about that. Something has to be done. Last time I checked, there's a bunch of law-abiding, God-fearing citizens who happen to be black living in the streets of Chicago, on the south side, on the west side, and every place in between. We can't use the word enslavement in an official capacity associated with Juneteenth. But ain't that an element of it? If you were in the streets of Chicago, living in one of these neighborhoods, and you're a parent or a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle, an elder statesman, and it's dangerous for you to walk the streets because you don't know whether or not you're going to get shot, is that not a form of enslavement? Because you can't come outside half the time because you're too damn scared. I recall seeing black people on national television from Chicago calling for martial law to be invoked, begging for federal assistance. This is before Trump got back in office. This was years ago. What's going to be done about it? What's going to be done about it? And now we're living in a polarized society that we're living in. I'm asking the question. I'm not engaging in condemnation. The criminals, the one who is doing the killings, they're the ones who need to be condemned. I'm not trying to denigrate anybody in the streets of Chicago. God-fearing, law-abiding citizens just trying to make a life for themselves. Every time we turn around, there's something going on in Chicago. Every time. And the vast majority of victims happen to be black. When we going to speak about that? Same energy, y'all. Don't lose the intensity. Keep the same intensity. We're going to fight and fight and fight over a young kid that admitted he killed somebody. And we care crickets when 39 people get shot and 6 get killed in Chicago on Juneteenth. Have you read some of this stuff? Juneteenth holiday came to a violent end on the south side with more than 100 shell casings near 95th and Wentworth, where a drive-by shooting left 14 people injured just after 11 p.m. on Friday. The victims were between 17 and 47 years of age, and that was just one location. You ain't got nothing to say about that? Nothing to say about that at all. Other people have something to say about it. You can sit up there and get on his delivery, his presentation, his vocabulary. You can say whatever the hell you want to say. How about this cat, Charleston White? I want y'all to listen to this brother. You understand? He's not everybody's cup of tea now. You ain't going to see him on network television now. You ain't going to see that. But I want you to listen. Don't pay attention to the presentation. Pay attention to the substance of his words and exactly what he is saying. Just listen. Listen to this.
You know, we obviously blame the rapper, but we ignore who's behind the rapper. And nobody. It's the white man.
No, you goddamn lie.
No, it's the white man.
No. Listen, when you show up to my record label with your killing music, I ain't behind what you wrote.
The white man is for sure.
You wrote them before you got here.
And you just gave $1 million for it.
But you wrote it. But listen, listen, brother. I'm a businessman.
Right.
I ain't got nothing to do with what you wrote. You wrote the lyrics talking about killing your neighbor.
But you didn't tell me, no, this isn't what you're supposed to be writing. You said, I'm going to give you $1 million
but listen.
So you encouraged it.
No, I didn't.
With the utmost dollar amount.
No, I didn't. I'm a businessman and I'm about business. Because when you stop rapping this and I get a Nas X and he can rap gay, I'm going to sign him too. You showed up with these gay killer lyrics, brother. I ain't got nothing to do with what's in your mind and what you want to project. I just know your destruction makes money. You came to provide y'all destruction, and it's gonna benefit me and my family. Why would I turn you down? Do you turn down the pregnant drug addict who's trying to buy crack from you, brother? What about the girl who may look underage and selling? Do you turn her down? What about your homeboy's woman who's in a compromised state and you can fuck her and she comes to you? Do you turn her down? So you want me to turn you down? And I can make trillions off your ignorance. You're not bringing me nothing positive that I can promote to Disney. I can make you richer than you can ever be if you wrote me some Disney lyrics. Hey, if you just want to be like Nick Cannon, I can make you a star forever. But you want to be a star just for a small time, so you write gangster lyrics because you don't want to live long. Your mind wrote these lyrics. All of that hate that you're professing, I didn't whisper that in your ear. I didn't pick your mother and your father when they made it, and your dad left your mom, to go to chick. I didn't have nothing to do with that, guy. Why are you blaming me as a white man? I got a record label, brother. We just want to sell records to your people. And if we don't have these records to sell to your people, how will your people make music? Your people don't have record labels. How will they make music if it wasn't for us?
There's a whole bunch of people expressing that sentiment. And it's not on behalf of white folks or anybody outside of the black community. It's being expressed by black people who are disgusted with us picking the wrong battles to fight, facilitating and initiating our own demise. Karmelo Anthony had a bright future, had a 3.7 GPA, worked 2 jobs, no criminal record. Of course, you wish that there was some leniency, that the young man wasn't being sentenced to 35 years in prison.
And the thing is, with this channel, I make people listen to everyone because you truly can't defeat people's arguments or tell them why it's wrong unless you know what they are. So it's important to be open-minded to hear all the sides. Doesn't mean you're going to agree with everything you hear, but it's the best way to go.
But Austin Metcalf is dead. Yeah, people going off because somebody said, whether it's me or somebody else, he was murdered. Well, okay, fine. He wasn't murdered. He was killed. We didn't say while the case was going on. We said he was murdered because he got convicted of murder. Or his assailant got convicted of murder. Sorry that the proper lingo wasn't used. Austin Metcalf is dead. He was killed. The person convicted of first-degree murder of Austin Metcalf was Karmelo Anthony. And folks are in an uproar because that life has been drastically altered forever. One may have nothing to do with the other in some people's eyes. But to a lot of cynics and skeptics out there who are always looking for a reason, a nugget of proof to look at the black community and get on us for not having our eyes and our energy where it needs to be, they're going to point to Juneteenth in Chicago. And they're going to say, they said nothing about that. You know what else they're going to accuse us of? They're going to accuse us of only caring about black lives being lost when it comes at the hands of somebody outside the black community. What happens when that narrative is fed into and it's allowed to foment and grow? all of a sudden it hits the legal system. Even more so. And there's an additional mark against us for focusing a lot less on what we should be focused on. My heart goes out to Karmelo Anthony. I don't like the thought of the brother being in jail for at least the next 17 years. But I like even less the fact that Austin Metcalf is never coming home. As is the case with 6 people that were killed on Juneteenth in the streets of Southside Chicago. And another 39 injured. If we're going to talk about it, let's talk about it.
I'll tell you what, if people think Stephen A is pandering or race baiting, they should listen to the people to the left of Stephen A, and your heads would probably explode, is what I would say.
That's all I'm trying to say. In fact, it is one of the things we'll be talking about later on this week. Because as has been the case on a weekly basis over the last couple of weeks, I told you as a registered independent, I wanted to get voices from the Black community, not just from the Black community, but primarily from the Black community on both the right and the left side of the aisle to come together and debate the issues that are really pertinent to us as American citizens and as Black people in the United States of America. They won't be the only ones. I'll bring on white folks. I'll bring on Hispanic folks. I'll bring on stuff as long as you're on the left and the right and you got something to debate. I'm welcoming you to the table to have a discussion so all of us can be enlightened. And no question, when I had Theron Johnson out of Atlanta and the one and only Anton Daniels out of Detroit debating just a few hours ago, one of the things that I asked them was about the whole Karmelo Anthony situation, about how the Black community is being perceived, etc. There's a lot of things we talked about. There's a lot of things you're going to see. But not to be specific, but just to give you a taste of the flavor that you're going to see posted on my YouTube channel in just a couple of days. Here's a look at Anton Daniels.
I will say, no one chooses to be born in the hood into poverty. No one chooses their parents. A lot of people that are in a better spot, they completely take for granted all of the things that they had in their favor. So it takes people to look and think about it differently. And a lot of people just don't want to think about it like that. And instead what they'll do is they'll completely take for granted everything they had going for them.
And Theron Johnson.
So what we're seeing with our crime stats is that people in America, and it's not just a Black issue, it's everybody, right? That they're de-escalating situations no more with just fighting. They're actually using guns to shoot people. The other thing I would say is this, the issue around crime. We got to give people more access to jobs, right? I believe that people right now are poor, they're hurting, they're hungry, gas prices are out of control. And so they are using these guns and this violence to shoot people. And a lot of them are like turf wars. A lot of these are disagreements about family disagreements, about a partner or a woman or a man. And we're not able to de-escalate that anymore.
They are juking the stats and they're reducing how they're reallocating how they're classifying crime. A lot of these crimes actually go unreported. These are not issues of people that are having some kind of domestic.
Jane, my point was that no one chooses, but what some people are born into is way better than what other people are born into. That's also true. You'd be lying. Like, anyone who disagrees with that is being disingenuous. People that are born into wealthy families, for example, that's a completely different existence than someone who's born into poverty. It just is, regardless of someone's race.
Dispute, and then it spirals out of control. These are people that are targeting other people, carjackings, taking them to ATMs and having them remove money, telling them to give you your phone and so they can get your password. These are drive-bys. When 12 people were shot over Juneteenth, right, this past weekend over in Chicago, that was a drive-by, and they had over 113 shell casings on the ground.
As I said to you on many occasions, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be a place rather for riveting discussion. I'm not trying to take sides. I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to edify myself. Be better so I can do better. And contribute to enlightening folks about how they need to be better so they can do better, so we can all do better.
Because in a way, I think Stephen A. is actually trying to be pragmatic, because to the people that need to hear what he's saying now, they're just going to completely tune out if they start talking like Officer Tatum. Like a leftist is going to hear Officer Tatum and they're going to completely shut him out and tune it out. But in order to actually reach people that need to be reached, you have to meet them a little bit where they are. If you don't do that, no one's going to listen. Now, the people that are already seeking it out anyway, that's different. So people that are into self-improvement, for example, maybe they'll find somebody like Tony Robbins, Alex Hermosi, fill in the blank. Yeah, those guys, you have the hunger, you have the drive, you seek those people out.
That's what Straight Shooter is all about. That's what Straight Shooter Media is all about. That's what this show is all about. That's what it's been about, and that's what it's going to continue to be about. Get used to it, because I'm not going anywhere. And hopefully, neither are you. Please remember to subscribe to Straight Shooter with yours truly, Stephen A. Smith. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, Straight Shooter Media. Please continue to provide the support. Keep the love coming. I'm going to keep on coming. Until next time, everybody, Stephen A. signing off.
All right. So those were the only two videos that I wanted to go over. Took us 2 hours and 15 minutes just to go over those two. But I thought they were good videos. I liked, in particular, Annie Elise's video because it went over some of the rumors that were out there that I wanted to get to the bottom of, get some clarity on them. And I think it was very helpful. Names, please, of what? I don't understand, Chatty Cathy. Tony Robbins, Alex Hermosi. Names of what? Yeah, I mean, so I was asking what the names, I don't understand. But so Stephen A. Smith was the second video, Annie Elise was the first video. But I'm not sure if those are the names you're referring to or something else. Yes, I thought so too, Linda. I thought so too. But like I said, that was really all I wanted to go over here. While you're here, make sure you like the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel as well. Say hello to the flock of black sheep. I like her content. She's probably got a good team behind her too. But whoever does the research for the channel, they do a good job. And they put it all in one place. And they make it easy for people like yours truly to get the information, spread it, learn from it. And we love it. So, but that's really it though. Shadow and I want to bid you all adieu because that's all we had to go over. I'm thinking of some more topics. I will be doing more interviews coming up as well because, yes, D, only 35 likes. Now, maybe some of it's because I haven't been stopping as often and asking for likes. But in this video, there hasn't been as many people here anyway, so it wouldn't have mattered. And I've also noticed that since it's summertime now, less people, I think, in the chats. I've also noticed YouTube doesn't like it as much when I go over other people's content. I've noticed that as well. Thank you, Snoop. So I'm learning I have to roll with the punches and do more things. You did try, D. You did. I certainly will not fault that. Happy solstice indeed, I'll puke. Well, sold out in what way, though? Just to a generalized true crime audience? How would you say how has she changed? I guess that's the question to ask. Linda says both videos were very good and informative for me. Stephen A. usually is loud and funny. He had a more serious tone. Never seen him like that before. Oh, because it's a race issue, right? It's a race issue impacting him and the black community. So I thought it was helpful. Some people don't like it, but I think some of the people further to the left of him, they would be well served, I think, to hear his message. Others might not think it, but that's what I think. You got it, Danielle. Miss Kim, thanks for modding, Miss Kim. There's no Laura tonight. I guess there were song bits earlier. We got to wish song bits good vibes because she has a broken wrist. I didn't like hearing that. It was nice to see Livin tonight. Livin the mod. I always like seeing her. But members only live stream tomorrow, a little bit after 8 p.m. Eastern. Shadow is indeed ready for some soy-free Hootie Snacks, Jane. And the wizard himself is ready for some popcorn, carrots, and an orange. How about that? Thank you very much, Teresa, for being here as well. Thank you to the mods. Pray for Song Bits and her broken wrist. Pray for Jackie. Although Jackie wasn't here tonight, by the way. I'm not sure where she was. Pray for Bella. Haven't seen Bella here for a little while. Pray for a beautiful waterfall. We miss here there too. All the black sheep. The shepherd of black sheep does want to watch over the flock. So, it's all right, folks. Thanks again for being here. Share the video. Tell some friends that are worthy of the flock of black sheep here. And we will see you all tomorrow night. So long, folks.